get into some of the criteria. So you see here the headings at the top of the page, there have been several things that are added. We've just been zooming along, and I realized that the syllabus wasn't there, so I'm going to open this so that we can take just a quick look at this today. Primarily, I'll just ask that you read through as far as objectives and so on. Our information is here for email or for office phones, and however, I would like to go down to general objectives, of course, bibliographic materials, effectiveness and clarity of student writing, the ethics of research and writing, and so on. And we'll be talking a little bit about your degree completion projects as well, but primarily focusing on the writing at this point and developing just a thorough awareness of all of the materials that are available for you through the library. Experience-specific objectives and so on, but the evaluation is important here. So let's just talk about this very briefly. The writing and research assignments are these weekly assignments that you will be doing. And the culmination of those will be weighted as 35% of your grade. Okay? So very important that you stay on top of those and that you get those submitted and take advantage of the opportunity to resubmit. We have, as Mrs. Ward said, she sent you an email today saying that your papers are ready for revision, and I've commented on those as well. Sometimes in the text box and sometimes in the document itself, but you can clearly see if we both commented. For example, Paul, her comments are in blue, mine are in red. It's just very clearly, okay? Here's information on a book title, and I want you to go ahead and, as if you are putting this in a bibliographic form, you're going to use this in your paper. So put this in bibliographic form, and then and so you will use APA, you will use Trajan. I'll give you a minute or two to do that, and then the next slide will show you what it should look like, and we'll talk through that.
I'm going to open the store so you can see
This is the book. Yes. This is the book.
Yeah. How reliable is the references part of have you ever taken what assignment of theirs?
No, I haven't. I just I use whatever they've offered, and then I always go back and check out when I had one. Yeah, I've used the one that's in the Discovery Service. I don't think I've ever used the one in Word, to be honest.
As far as the citation.
Yeah.
Is there there are things like, there are programs like EndNote, and Word has a program built into it that will do citations, references. But I'll tell you, it gets quirky in the document. I always have a little bit of trouble when it automatically embeds things, because then it's hard to change or modify. I don't know, and I have found, I still have to go back over and eyeball it carefully, because if there's anything at all unusual or out of ordinary with the information you have, it can get kind of messed up.
And we've talked about that before when it comes to Discovery Service, the big search engine through the library. It does citations for you as well. And typically, and this is true for most of the machine-generated citations, the information itself is usually solid. So the title, the author, when you accessed it, that information is pretty good. But what's not right is the formatting. The italics and the commas and the periods and what order they're in. That's the part that you have to go back through and check.
Yeah. So, it's just so important to remember if the example you're looking at in the text, look at the examples given. If the example does not have a period after the title, but it goes right into something else, then don't put a period there. But if it does, it needs it. Okay? Everything's very exacting when it comes to this. And I will just say, having edited lots of papers for authors in books that I've edited, I go through a lot of reading because even the people who should know better make errors. So I'm kind of the citation Nazi.
For lack of a better phrase.
Exactly. Definitely, for lack of a better phrase. The police. I did just send you some comments to the comments.
Yeah. My problem is I can't get the program word on it.
What do you have?
I have a Mac and I don't have to buy the whole suite, like the office suite.
What do you have? What do you use now?
I just have to come to school or whatnot. I made notes on my notepad on my computer and then email them to you know. And I have to come here to do that. I'm not always able
You
to
can download something called OpenOffice,
look it up.
and it's free. And in OpenOffice, it does a lot of things that look like Word. It's not, it's fully functional. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles. But you just have to use it. You just save it as OpenOffice file. It's not going to open, but you can save the OpenOffice file as a Word document.
Okay, so I would just like Google open office and let it download it.
And when you download it, and it downloads just like Word, it's documents, presentations, Excel sheets. Yeah.
Because I plan on getting one, but
Yeah.
I'll be slow.
But in
And
the
make sure
meantime,
you know there's a student discount if you ever buy Office Word.
you can
Yeah,
buy
I plan on buying
student
it.
Word. Yeah, the student version of Word is considered, it's like $300 less. than the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Hey, has everybody had this one done? Very good. So, the big reveal. Ta-da-da. So check and see if this is what yours looks like.
Now, is that 2 spaces between the periods?
I did put, I think I probably did put 2 spaces there between periods. It's quirky, APA has gone back and forth with that. APA 5 said use only 1 space between period and the next word. APA 6 has gone back to 2 spaces. And I'm trying to, that may be one thing I did not specifically check into, but I don't know that Travian specifies 1 or 2 spaces.
I don't think it does.
Yeah.
I think that typically, I know that when I'm doing it, like the JP Putnams, those would be 1 space. But the one that ends, the period that ends like it's the end of a sentence, I do those as 2 spaces.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that Travian has any sort of hard fast rules about it.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's 1 space in the names. But here, I tend to use the 2 spaces. Question?
Yeah.
If mine fit in just one line and it didn't bump
Yeah,
it
that's
over
okay.
to, it's
Yeah,
good.
that's okay. You don't have to make it wrap, but if it
So-
wraps, it does. It's always a hanging indent. Okay. Where the first line is justified, the second line is indentified. Yes.
Where is the citation that on the library catalog? Where's the citation?
So in the libraries online, in the search engine, you have to be in a full record.
Because I use this.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the right format.
Well, it's not going to be exactly correct. Go down to the library. But you have to be using a record that you found in the library, in the search engine.
You can't use on like a book.
Well, you can use on a book that you found out there because it'll be in there. But you can't use on something that you found online that we don't have a record for.
It's likely that we have this. We should have this in the library.
And you said, so you don't indent the first line?
You do. No, you don't indent the first. The first is justified to the margin. Every subsequent line, if you have 3 or more lines to this, has to be indented by.
Okay, so here is a book, an ebook on Beethoven. And when you click on the title, you get full record. And once you're in a full record, you can click the cite button. And then it's going to build citations for you in all of the most commonly used styles. And then you get your straight information.
So if you have a book out there that you found on the shelf,
Yes.
you can look it up on Google.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do that by title.
Yeah.
Because you put the title in here and say, I'm searching by title.
But still
And
look
then
through
it's
and
the
carefully
whole
and verify that it is
Yeah.
actually correct. Yeah. So the differences, let's just talk for a second about the differences. Travian spells out first name, APA never does. APA just uses initials. If we had multiple authors, say John Dewey wrote this with Fred McMurray. You'd have Dewey, comma, John, comma, and Fred McMurray. The other names are not inverted, only the first name is. If it were down here, it would be Dewey, comma, J, and Murray, comma, F, and so on. So that's a difference between the two. So that's just something important to keep in mind. APA always puts the date immediately after the author. Turabian has it at the end. Turabian has the title fully capitalized. And this is something that drives other people, non-APA people, crazy, is that in APA, your titles, only the first word is capitalized. You do not capitalize other words. If there were a colon here, art as experience, colon, thoughts of Dewey, then the word thoughts would also be capitalized. So the first word or the first word after a colon are capitalized, otherwise all lowercase. Unless it's a proper name, like you would still capitalize Chicago.
The as, is that supposed to be capitalized?
If it's for Turabian, you do it as the title is. Did I have it capitalized in the previous? I didn't have it, so you can do it either way. I mean, that's not as critical, no pun intended. But generally, you do it as the title appears on the book itself or in the document you're looking at.
And would it matter if I put like bibliography on the top? Or do you need a title for the actual page?
For that page? Yeah, I mean, usually you have it centered.
Yeah,
The center it says bibliography or reference, whatever.
Or works
Or
cited.
cited, you know, but just know the difference of what you're doing and when you're including and not including materials not specifically cited in the document.
And that issue of capitalizing your titles is a little bit tricky as well if you're using an online catalog, because some catalogers capitalize all the words of a title and some catalogers don't. So some online catalogs will have it where it looks more like the APA version of the title, and some catalogs will have it where it looks more like the Turabian version of the title.
And when you click on that cite button, it may or may not get it right. So that's where you have to check those kinds of things. You still have to eyeball it. It's, you know, yeah. So anyway, that was just a moment to talk a little bit about the contrast between the two. So let's go down to, well, we've got time for another. Here's one. This one, in addition to the other information, it's another book, but it's a revised second edition. So how do we include that? So again, let's format this and see what it looks like. Sometimes they call one, what do they call one?
Oh, one's a reference list, the one's a bibliography.
Right, because it will talk about a reference list style or a bibliography style or a footnote style versus citation style.
Right, because in Turabian, you do a different kind of citation depending on where you're going to use it. So if you're going to use it on a works cited page, it's a different style of citation than, say, if you were like a librarian creating a full record, and then you have a different style of citation.
I have a question. All the sources I've used so far in the citation, you have to access the date by it. You didn't have that on the last one.
Access date?
Yeah.
No, that's just when you access it in the system.
You were
it's in the
accessing-
it's in the actual.
Yeah, you were accessing an electronic version, you were accessing an ebook. So in an ebook, then they have, in Turabian has this as well, where you almost treat it like a website, because you do list when you access that electronic material.
But just a normal book doesn't have an access date.
Right.
Like you pull a book off the shelf, there's nothing in that book that has an access date. If you use, and we'll get into this, we're not doing electronic things today in the examples, we'll do some electronic examples later, and then we'll talk about DAI versus, access date, or how to correctly cite electronic information, which is a moving target that changes weekly.
Changes every time they produce a new manual.
When you copy and paste on this citation thing on database, in the Word, it doesn't, there's no highlighted.
Yeah.
It's in one color.
I would suggest for this today, just type in the word.
Yeah.
Don't use the citation formatter thing.
And some of the formatting will disappear when you copy and paste it, and that's true for most of the citation builders. So like anything that's in italics, that command for italicize goes away when you copy and paste it, which is one of those things you have to be very careful about when you use the citation builder, is that it has these little commands inside of it that disappear.
So it's sort of like statistics. In statistics, you can just take data and plug it into SPSS and, click the right buttons and it does it. But you will understand it much better if you actually have at some point gone through the process of following the formulas needed to get that result. So I would say at this point, bypass the citation builders until you get comfortable really knowing what it should look like when you type it out. And that way, if you want to use a citation builder later, it'll be much more evident to you if there is something problematic with it.
You'll be more confident.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, never use parentheses in the citation.
Pardon me?
Entry being we don't use the parentheses.
You may, in a reference, you may use parentheses depending
I'm
on,
doing it all the time.
around the date, or if it, it just depends on what your criteria is for that, what you're citing, yeah. Finished with your? And I use this to point out that in the Turabian textbook that you use, in the Turabian book, it gives examples of a lot of different categories. I don't think it specifically has, second or other editions listed as a separate category. So sometimes in the manual, you may not find the specific example you're looking for, but you go to the index at the end and look up second edition. It will tell you where it refers to that, and in the body of the text then it will just say, if it is a second edition, then do this. But it may not have the whole example laid out for you. Ready to take a look at this? For the sake of time, let's just take a look and see what it has. And I need to fix this right now because or I'll just tell you. When I did this, I forgot to put the revised here, and I was thinking about this a while ago. It should be REV before the second edition. REV period, second edition. Why is there a period after second? That is not right.
And that is an important distinction because the revised edition is different than just an edition.
Yes. So, let me get rid of this period that I have no idea where that came from.
Enable editing up above.
Oh, there we go. So we're going to take out this nasty little period here, and there we go. Well, I guess that went to the edge of the page, but ED period. Okay? Otherwise, I mean, if we took out the revised second edition, it looks exactly like the last book we did. So you just put that information following the title. And in APA, it is inserted parenthetically. It is not in Turabian.
Why they have different styles?
This is a question that we ask all the time.
Yeah. APA is used a lot, is in hard sciences, and APA does the citations that are embedded in the document parenthetically. So there will be a statement, and then at the end of the statement, right there in parentheses, is that citation. I think it's just something that evolved in the science world as being a much quicker way to identify than going back and forth between, the footnote style citations. But in arts and humanities, the Turabians seem to carry over more, but for whatever reason, in music education back in the 50s, APA was sort of deemed the style to use, and it has continued to be that. Because APA is also, it stands for the American Psychological Association. In psychological research, they always use APA. That is the standard in psychology. And because a lot of research in music ed initially was descriptive or experimental or correlational, quantitative research, then they just followed that model from psychology and used APA. But musicologists followed more the humanities style and adopted Turabian.
What happened to MLA?
MLA is still there.
MLA is still there, Chicago is still there, Turabian, and the MLA, Chicago, Turabian, there's more similarities among those three. APA is kind of its own thing
And
often.
there's also an AMA
Yeah.
citation style, which is used by the Medical Association. And there's a ton of different kinds of citation styles out there.
Yeah.
Some of them are very disciplinary. They have to do with a particular kind of writing in a particular discipline.
Yeah.
And some of them have to do with their history. I think that, as I understand it, part of the Turabian came about because footnotes weren't just a citation. And you'll see this in some styles of writing where footnotes are actual sort of extra notations and it's extra pieces of information. And so they just, that sort of morphed into this idea of creating these citations at the bottom of the page. But there are these, and especially like if you look at study Bibles and stuff, you'll see that they'll have the Bible, and then at the bottom there'll be 18 different footnotes that are these nice long, like whole paragraphs that give you more information about that particular scripture. That style of writing still happens, and so I think that part of that, as I understand it, that morphed from that idea of using footnotes to give more information.
And in some styles, they will use either the body citation, the parenthetical citation, or the footnote style citation, plus what they call endnotes. And endnotes will be numbered sort of like footnotes, but you go to the end, and those are, that can be a short paragraph even, further explaining something that is in the body of the text. So again, those are all pretty domain specific though. And closely tied to.
But to be clear, some of us would love it if there was one citation style.
Yeah, so even in like music, the different disciplines have different sources.
Yes. Yeah. In qualitative research in music ed, it can go either way, APA or Turabian, depending on the style of the paper, whether it's a narrative, ethnography, case study, or whatever. So the design of the research also has an impact, also will determine the style that's used. So you can really get in the weeds with this. So at this point, Turabian, unless you're music ed, APA.
And you just want to get really comfortable with your citation style. Make sure your manual becomes your new best friend. Vera, hold up my manual for a minute.
Is there a copy in the library so we can get one?
There is a copy in the library. But notice I have 42 sticky notes sticking out of my manual.
Mine had that too, wherever it is.
Those are all of the things that I use the most frequently. And if you open it up, you'll see all kinds of highlights in there as well, and maybe even notes in the margins, because I use it all the time. So you have to figure out the things that work and then be consistent. So every time you find this particular kind of book with this particular kind of revision, you're going to cite it the same way every single time you're going to cite it. So that that you get into that habit. And you want to make sure that when you're writing a paper, that every citation is exactly the same format, all the way from the start of your paper to the end of your paper. Yes. It's a little trickier for the music folks because we come across some weird material. Yes. We come across material that falls through the cracks, even in a nice big manual like the Turabian one. That you're looking at it and you're like, I don't even know what to call this, let alone how to do a citation. And that's tricky because what you have to do is find something that's as close as possible and make a citation and sort of stick with it. And just decide that that's how you're going to cite it until someone tells you otherwise.
It's not right. For the things that are ill-defined, shall we say, or not defined. For example, a quirky thing is if you find some snippet of really interesting information on the jacket of a CD. How do you cite that? That is tricky. But find the closest thing to it and then just make sure every time you cite something that is from the jacket of a CD, which probably won't be very often, but occasionally, just every time you do that, be consistent. That is the main thing, is just to maintain consistency within your own paper. If it's not clearly spelled out, then that means there isn't really a right or wrong way. But just think logically about how much information do I need to provide to the reader so that they can find this also if they want this. That's the key. That's what this is all about, is making sure somebody has absolutely the essential information to also be able to find it for their research or to verify yours. And that's why it's so important to be accurate with this. With every little jot and tittle of this, be very careful.
And we've talked about this before, but one of the things that you're going to discover as part of graduate school is that not only can professors, and they will, question why you chose particular resources, but they might also question, why did you choose this particular kind of citation? And then you want to be able to say, look, I looked through the manual, and this was the closest that I found, and I felt like this was a good representation. And sometimes that's enough for your professor to then say, okay, well, that's fine. As long as you have a good logical reason for why you chose to cite it like that, that's fine. Or they might say, yeah, I would never do it that way. You need to change all of them. And that might happen. You should prepare yourself.
Now, the other thing, too, is some larger schools of music, and I'm thinking that perhaps Indiana University, which has a huge library presence online and so on, they may also have some guides there for specific citation issues in music.
Yeah.
And so you can always, Google Turabian style musical score, and it will bring up some different examples. And again, like you judge any website, look at if this is coming from the Indiana University website. It's a safe model to follow.
And then a couple of the different conservatories as well.
Yes.
They have fantastic library websites.
Yes.
And they undoubtedly have a subject guide or two on citation stats.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So that's another, you can use Google, just be smart about how you use it and what comes up. But the larger known university music schools will often have guides.
If you look up music subject guides and libraries, you might be able to come up with some interesting sites.
Okay, we'll stop with this tonight, and then we'll do a couple of these each time. Next time we'll do one on, a journal, and so we'll just kind of get a little practice going forward. When we have time, we'll fit these in, and then we'll take a look at what we do with some musical things as well as far as citing those. And I've got several more examples, but we'll just fit them in as time allows. Okay? All minds clear? Not clear. Clear.